Good afternoon. My name is Loretta Ellsworth, and it's my privilege to welcome you to this webinar on behalf of the Programming Committee here at the Minnesota Association of Library Friends. For our last program of the year, we're trying something a little different. Most of our webinars and workshops are structured around educational topics with particular resonance for friends, fundraising, membership solicitation, marketing, and so on. If this is your first time with us and those topics pique your interest, be sure to check out the video archive on our newly revitalized website, mnlibraryfriends.org. Our content today could be described as a bit lighter by comparison, but you'll want to pay close attention nevertheless. Welcome to Warm Reads for Cold Nights. Minnesota authors recommend will include two parts. In a moment, team members from two of Minnesota's preeminent presses, Graywolf Press and Minnesota Historical Society Press, will take the stage to showcase highlights from their winter release schedules. Since we're in the midst of the holiday shopping season, I'm sure you will want to take copious notes. You are, of course, welcome to do so, but know that all registrants will also receive these complete lists afterwards at the email address on file with MALF. After we hear from our live guests, MALF will debut a 20-minute montage of winter read recommendations curated for you by no fewer than 15 of Minnesota's greatest living writers. Whether you're interested in mysteries, memoir, or a mix of everything, we guarantee you'll come away with a few gift ideas, as well as additions to your own TBR piles. While we're looking at a jam-packed hour, we also want to hear from you. What books do you recommend to fellow book lovers this holiday season? Bonus points for Minnesota authors in 2022 releases, but the sky is the limit. Drop your recommendations into chat at any time. Our office administrator, David, will collect these and share afterwards, along with a recording replay link for today's session and those takeaway materials from our guest speakers. Please include both title and author name with those recommendations and series title, if applicable. First, let's hear from Il Napashi at Graywolf Press. For anyone who doesn't know, Graywolf Press is a Minneapolis-based but nationally renowned publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Their past authors of note range from National Book Award winner David Treuer to U.S. Poet Laureate Tracy K. Smith to Oscar nominee James Franco. I welcome Il to tell us anything more about Graywolf that we should know before we dive into their catalog. Thank you, Il.
Thanks for hosting me. What a lovely event. And thanks to everyone who is here in the audience watching. I'm have a pretty short period of time, so I'll get into it fairly quickly. But yeah, again, thank you. Graywolf Press is located right in downtown Minneapolis. I am actually beaming in from California. I'm one of the few remote staffers, but I have lived in Minnesota before, so I hope you guys are all keeping warm. So let me start a little slideshow here. So first up, I'm going to give you our new releases. So our bestseller this season is easily Dr. No by Percival Everett. Some of you may already know Percival Everett. He's a longtime Graywolf author. He was recently shortlisted for the Booker, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But just released last month is Dr. No, his send up of kind of popular of James Bond and tropes of villainy. So Percival Everett always does these very funny, very unusual, incredibly smart books. And this, he's really thinking about the idea of nothing and what happens, how America creates its villains, and maybe giving America what it truly deserves, which is nothing. The main character is a professor of nothing. He actually studies what nothing is. And he gets recruited by this arch villain who has this interesting history. When you go back, you see kind of the story of how he was made, and his touch points with American history, with Dr. Martin Luther King and the assassination. He always brings all of this kind of cleverness into these books. There's a little bit of silliness, and they're so smart. So Dr. No is really our big book of the season. And we're just so proud to publish this guy. We've been publishing him for many years. He's an incredibly prolific writer. I think this is his 36th book. And it's funny to see somebody at their 34th, 35th, 36th book really start to have his career take off. But he's quietly been writing these incredibly interesting books, and suddenly it feels like the world is ready to pay attention. So I too would encourage you to pay attention to the funniest, strangest book that you will read this year, Dr. No by Percival Everett. On a completely different note, and with nonfiction, we've got A Line in the World by Dorte Noor. She's a Dutch writer. Usually she writes novels, and this is a book about the coastal region of Europe. So she spent a year living alone and writing this. When it was with the Dutch release, it was a book of photography. With this, there are beautiful pencil illustrations about the places that she's talking about. This is a great gift for a naturalist or someone who's really thinking about the way that the world works. She's just a deep and wonderful thinker and an incredible writer. So I think that this is just such a special, unusual book, and really, really happy to see it on our list. Next up is Life is Everywhere by Lucy Ives. This Lucy Ives, she's such an interesting thinker. She's another like effervescent, funny thinker. You never quite know where she's going. This started with an idea. So Ursula K. Le Guin, another writer, had this theory that the first tool was not in fact a spear, which we talk about, and not in fact a weapon, but it was a bag, that people are really gatherers, and that's where a lot of kind of society comes from, is that we're actually going around and gathering things. We like to think about the hero's journey, but really what we're doing is something sort of different as people, which is gathering ideas. And so Lucy Ives thought about this, and then she wrote Life is Everywhere, a novel that is literally based around the contents of a bag. So a graduate student locked out of her house has to wander New York and has with her only her purse. And you see inside of her purse sort of snippets of her life. There are manuscripts, telephone bill or electricity bills, and you get this just really interesting story. You never quite know where it's going. I think she serves up a little bit of everything. When I talk about this book, I like to talk about the introduction. She gives you a brief history of botulism, and you get this surprising, funny story about this doctor that was obsessed with botulism in Germany, which was a disease people got from sausages. And you're hearing this whole story about a failed poet, and it keeps getting sharper and sharper. And then you find yourself in the clinic where a woman is getting a Botox injection. And so she does these things where you're following along and you never quite know where you're going to wind up. So I absolutely love this book. It's just a real delight to read. And, you know, no presentation from Graywolf would be complete without talking about our poetry list. So, oops, sorry about that. I accidentally clicked something. So the final one in the new releases is Rupture Tense by Jenny Shia. This was recently nominated for the National Book Award. It's Jenny Shia's second book, both of which were nominated for the National Book Award, I should add. She's such a tremendously talented young poet. And this, she's talking about her trip back to China. And really the themes here are homeland and whether we can ever go back to the place that we were. I think she's coming at it as, you know, she was born an American, has deep, deep ties to China, and is really thinking about both what her life is and what it could be. Just truly, truly beautiful collection of poems, and wonderful for any poetry reader or anyone on your gift giving list who is interested in poetry. I want to talk about, this year was a big year for Graywolf in terms of award winners and nominees. And this kind of runs the gamut of what we saw. So again, Percival Everett last year released The Trees. One reviewer described it as the pipe bomb you can't put down, which I think is very true. Once you start it, it's impossible to put this book down. It's so funny. It's so acerbic. And again, he is using humor to really dig at the heart of America, and really dig at the heart of American history. So I think so much has been said about this book. If you haven't read it, you've got to give it a try. I think it's one of the best books that I've read this year in a year of just truly excellent reading. Next up is Frank Sonnets by Diane Seuss. This is, as you can tell by the seal, it won the Pulitzer Prize this year. This is a collection of sonnets about a man that Diane Seuss was very, very close to. And it's such a modern take on the form. It's brilliant. It's brilliantly done. There are gatefold poems. And I haven't read anything quite like it in either form or substance. Diane Seuss is, she's a practice poet, and you can see it come across in everything that she writes. And this is just a truly stellar collection and a very, very long love letter. On the other side of the border, Noor Naga was shortlisted for the Giller Prize, which is the Canadian equivalent of the National Book Award. I had not heard of it. It was a much bigger prize than I expected. And she also just recently won the first book prize from the Center for Fiction. If an Egyptian Cannot Speak English is it's experimental, it's daring, it's interesting. It is also the second winner of the Graywolf Africa Prize. All of these books have been doing tremendous things. We sort of open the floodgates to any book that has been written in Africa to publish it here. And the work that we get is absolutely tremendous. And out of all that tremendous work, we pick one winner. This is the story of a troubled relationship between an American girl and an Egyptian boy. He's struggling with drug addiction. She's struggling with identity issues. And the two of them meet in a way that is explosive. It's beautifully written. And I think she's really thinking about power, about difficult relationships, and about how we relate to people in ways that I hadn't seen before. So it's an experimental book that is unlike anything that I've ever read. On the other end of recognition is Voice of the Fish by Lars Horn. This one also is another winner. Graywolf has a bedrock of our list are these prize winners. And so this was the winner of the Graywolf Nonfiction Prize. Previous winners of the Graywolf Nonfiction Prize are Eula Biss, Leslie Jameson, people who have gone on to have these huge careers in creative nonfiction. Voice of the Fish is a collection of lyric essays, a little bit memoir. It's a hybrid form about the body, art, and gender. Again, it's unlike anything I've quite read. I can say it's about art, which it is. It's also about motherhood. And interestingly, it's about fish. Lars is really tying together all of these themes of what it means to have a body and to be in a body, and the ways that changes. Incredibly, incredibly beautifully written. I highly, highly recommend this book. Because we're doing a Minnesota writers presentation, Of course, I have to bring up the wonderful Minnesota writers on our list. First up, David Treuer. We just reissued Little, which was David Treuer's first book and a novel. We published this about 20 years ago, a little bit more than that. In this, you can really see David Treuer's future career as a historian. You can see everything that he is about to become, really. It's touching with so much Native history, with so much Minnesotan history, and it's just truly a beautiful, beautiful book. It's really an honor to be able to republish this. Charles Baxter, Wonderlands. For any writer in your life, this is highly recommended. I think that Charles Baxter is one of the best craft writers in the entire US. His books are highly anticipated, and it's just a lovely collection of essays on what it means to write and what it really means to live. And finally, Prognosis by Jim Moore, a poetry collection. Jim Moore is so wonderful. I hope that some of you in the audience may already be familiar with his work. He's a very established poet, and this is just a lovely collection of warm and interesting poetry that he was writing, particularly in the summer of George Floyd. I'm running out of time, so I'm quickly going to just flash a slide of all of the things that are coming next year. So when you see them in the bookstore, you can be like, I've heard about that. But we've got short stories by Yuri Herrera, essays by Tsitsi Dangaremba, essays by Roger Reeves, and Max Porter's newest novel. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I hope you all have, are staying warm, and I suddenly got very nervous. Are staying warm and enjoy the books.
Thank you, Il. Now we'll hear from Riley J. Davis at Minnesota Historical Society Press. Here's a fun fact to get us started. MHS holds distinction as the oldest publisher in the state and the largest historical society press anywhere in the country. In addition to a prodigious output of books, MNHS Press produces the popular quarterly Minnesota History magazine and MNopedia, a curated online encyclopedia centered around all things Minnesota. Okay.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Riley with Minnesota Historical Society Press. I also have Allison, who is our publicity manager until the end of the week when she moves on to another press, but that's another conversation. But she'll jump in with a few bits and pieces. I've got some books that have recently been published over this past year, and I'm also going to talk about some books that are upcoming. So first off, we've got the True North Cabin Cookbook. So this has been one of our biggest sellers for 2022. So Stephanie Hansen has a cabin up in Ely, Minnesota, and she really loves to cook for her family. So she collected a whole bunch of recipes, really fantastic dishes, and put them together for a cookbook here. So it's all stuff that you would be able to find, hopefully nearby a rural cabin area, because it's not like stuff that's gonna have to be ordered from overseas. So you're not gonna find more international ingredients such as like saffron in this, but you'll find things like goat cheese and other things that you would find like in rural Minnesota. So if you are kind of tired of doing burgers and broths for your family at your family cabin each summer, this will definitely give you some new ideas to spice things up. You can also obviously use the recipes not at your cabin. So if you are looking to do some things for the holidays, we have a new shipment of books coming in pretty soon here. So here's another picture of some of that really amazing food. I really want to try one of those grapefruit cocktails. I think they look fantastic. So another book that just recently published about, oh gosh, the publication date was about a week ago. This book is a little bit less of a joyful read, but it is an important, timely read. So Currently, right now, hearings are being held on ICWA, which is the Indian Child Welfare Act. I need to make sure I get that right. So that was established to make sure that when an Indigenous child is, for some reason, have to be removed from their family, that they are to be placed with the tribe before any other options are considered. And part of that reason is because of stories like Sandy Whitehawks, who she was adopted into a white family, and she unfortunately suffered a lot of abuse, a lot of racism because of that. And on her birth record, all she really knew was that her record said that she was a child of the Indian race, and that's all she really knew about herself. So when she decided she really needed to reconnect with her ancestry, she got connected with the Lakota elder, and she does a lot of work to helping people that have been removed from their Indigenous tribes to finding their way back and reconnecting. But right now, the Supreme Court is looking to overturn ICWA and make it so that Indigenous children could be adopted out anywhere. It's an issue of Indigenous sovereignty. And this book will really help to amplify the reasons why we really need to keep ICWA in place. So if you guys are curious and you've never even heard about it, I think this is going to be a really fantastic read. It's a very hopeful read. Next up, a recently published book is Heart of the Heartland, Norwegian American Community in the Twin Cities. So this is about so Minnesota, as many of you would know by living here, has a very large Norwegian population. A lot of people are descended from Norwegian folks. And so this has a lot of that history on what reasons people came here, what kind of impact did they have on the Twin Cities when they came here, and how that has progressed over the past almost 200 years. So I think this will be a really fun read, especially for a lot of people always like to learn a little bit more about their own history. And this is an important part of Minnesota history and how we've shaped ourselves. So definitely pick this one up.
Riley, can I jump in on the
Yes.
on the Norwegian one? Also, perhaps our only book that has been placed into the hands of royalty. We were able to get a copy because we co-published it with the Norwegian American Historical Association, who were involved and got to meet Queen Sonja, the Queen of Norway, when she was here. And this book was presented to her. So that's our little, of course, the publicist has to chime in with that little brush with fame. Okay, thank you, Riley.
So next up, we did a republishing of the Wilhelm Moberg book series of books. So these were books that were published probably about 50 years ago, originally in Swedish, and then we had acquired them, published them with different covers. So this about was it 20 years ago that we had first published it in Minnesota. So we originally published it, we just re-released them with these really nice new covers. They're a little bit more uniform and look a little bit less like historical books, but this is more of a novel. So it's a little bit more, I don't want to say fun of a read necessarily, because I find fun in reading nonfiction books, but it is a more fictionalized story. So, but it is one of the most prolific Swedish writers, especially known in the United States, but it's very interesting read. So we've got all 4 books. They're all available. You can get them at your bookstore or library. Next one, published earlier this year, is The Big Leaf Leap. So it was written by Mary Beth Griffith, who has written some other more sciencey books with us. Rhonda's Rock Hunt, you might be familiar with. And it's been illustrated by Malik Davis. So he based the main character off of his daughter. So look how freaking adorable she is. So this is one of my favorite books off of our recently published catalog. is this girl wants to make a leaf pile. And so she starts collecting leaves, and all of the other kids in the neighborhood are seeing like her collecting leaves and building a leaf pile and start joining in with her. And one of the things I really like about this book is that it's very diverse without their diversity being a talking point of the book. So a lot of kids will see themselves in just like POC kids having fun for the sake of having fun, which is something we don't always get a lot, or at least I didn't get a lot of that when I was a kid. So I always really like to see that coming. And there's also like some educational stuff in the back about what happens to leaves when they decompose, what different colors, how the different colors happen. So it's a little bit science educational while still being fun. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of our upcoming titles. So in March, we are going to have a book coming out called Wild Things, a trans glam punk rock love story. So this is a story about a couple that met when they were in high school. They were out in Duluth, I believe, when they met. And so they met in high school, started dating, and then after a few years together, Steve realized that they were not a Steve and decided to transition to female in the early 90s, when this was a lot more taboo of an experience to be going through. And so Lynette is the author of the book, and she is the partner of Steve, who changed her name to Venus to Mars. And so she documented like their whole love story and their journey of Venus's transition and what that experience was like. Venus is also a front person for a punk rock band called All the Pretty Horses. So, and that's been known throughout the Twin Cities and New York for a little while. And both of them are also Twin Cities artists with a pretty huge following amongst themselves. So I think this is going to be one of my favorite books of our spring catalog coming up. And it's going to have a whole bunch of just like fun punk rock history facts, which I'm always a huge fan of. So there's a little bit of a blurb. So another one of our really upcoming books is a book called In the Beginning, the Sun, The Legend of Dakota Creation. So this was originally written by Charles Eastman, who was one of the first really well-known Indigenous scholars in Minnesota, or in was it Minnesota necessarily, or
not necessarily, but nationally he was known.
Yeah, he was nationally known. So at the time he wrote down the, like, collected the stories of the Dakota stories of creation. A bunch of tribes all have their own different stories. So this is the Dakota one. And so it had never been published before. And so finally it's getting published and it's coming out in April. Unfortunately, well past his life, but hopefully this will meet the hands of a lot of people that have like never learned about Charles Eastman's work before, and will also like learn one of the really important like stories of creation. So I'm really excited about this one. This has been a lot of work and care has been put into this book over the past, how many years have we been working on this? It's been
at least a couple.
Yeah. So we've been working on it for a while after it had been waiting. Another thing to know is one of our prolific authors, Anton Treuer, has written a lot of books that you might know before: The Cultural Toolbox, Language Warriors Manifesto, and one of the best well-known books, Everything You Want to Know About Indians But Were Afraid to Ask, will be coming out with a new expanded edition coming out in April. So it'll have a lot of updates since the last time it was published, which was like, what was it, like maybe 20 years ago that the first edition was published. So a lot of things have changed about the conversation of Indigenous people. And so there's been a lot of additions added to it. I'm really excited. I think this is going to be a really great read for a lot of people. It'll end up in classrooms, bookshelves. anybody that wants to know about Indians and have been afraid to ask, this would be a great one for you. Another one of our upcoming books is Mindscape. So this will be talking about the mined lands over in the Iron Range and how that land can look differently now. So after mining, a lot of land gets permanently changed in a way that like has affected climate change for a lot of people before. It also affects a lot of people's livelihoods because of the fact that that's been a huge job market for a lot of people that live over by the Iron Range. So this book is about talking about like what happens to the land now that we've mined it. Like what are the ways that we are able to repurpose it and make it still a part of our community. So I think a lot of times when we think about mined lands, we think of it as like it's no good anymore. So this is kind of talking about like, this is why it's still important. This is how we can repurpose this land that's been mined before and what a future looks like after mining. So I think this will be a good one for, especially for people that are have always, like, it's not going to talk about mining in a way that like disregards the impact that that economy has had on people, but it will talk about it in a way that is hopeful for the future, especially with the threat of climate change being on us. Couple of kids books, Nana and Abuela. So this is a cute little book about a young girl with her grandmother on her mom's side and a grandmother on her dad's side. So one is her Nana, who speaks only English, and the other is her Abuela, who only speaks Spanish. And so they're all babysitting her together, and it's very adorable, and the art is probably one of my absolute favorites. It's super lively and joyful, and there's some Spanish language words put into it. It's not a like word for word translation, or there's no like, it's not a bilingual book, but it is a like multi-conversational book. So I'm excited for this one. So you can see a little bit here about how they're all trying to understand each other, because of course baby doesn't understand that these are different languages, and the Nana and the Abuela are both trying to understand each other and understand baby Luna. And then last one that I'm going to really talk about is Star Party. So this one is another multi-generational story about a girl that goes to hang out with her grandparents, and they are going outside to have a star party. So they are out in the woods. They're seeing a bunch of like nocturnal creatures and animals that she doesn't really see because she lives in the city. And then they go outside and have a star party and talk a little bit about like why she doesn't see the stars where she lives in the city, and it's about light pollution. But the artwork is really fantastic because it's despite it being very dark, it's still very vibrant, which I think is a very hard line to follow. So yeah, those are Minnesota Historical Society Press books. So some of the ones that are already published, some that are forthcoming, you can get them at your local library, or we really love independent bookstores. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Riley and Allison. Next, we're excited to debut a montage of wide-ranging suggestions from Minnesota writers. We encourage you to just sit back and enjoy. A list will be provided to you after we wrap today, along with other materials already mentioned. As a reminder, if you haven't already done so, now would be an excellent time to drop your own book recommendations into the Zoom chat. We won't read them here in the moment for the sake of time, but we'll make sure that they get selected and shared. Now let's play the video.
Hi, I'm Amy Bissonette, and I'm a Minnesota children's book author. I'm here today to talk to you about two books, one a book of my own, and another by another Minnesota author, his debut picture book, It's Just a Treat. So to begin with, I'm going to talk about When Winter Comes. And this is a book that I had the pleasure of working with Erin Horrigan on. Erin is an incredible illustrator, and she and I have subsequently worked on some other seasonal titles. But it's a book about discovering nature and really shows a family out engaging in nature, also available in a board book size, and discovering during their walks, whether they're bird feeding or ice fishing or skiing, where do the animals go when it snows? So that's When Winter Comes. The other book is this really funny book by Matt Lilly called Good Eating, The Short Life of Krill. It's illustrated by Dan Tavis. The illustrations are adorable, including these end pages. It's a book that, as I said, in a very humorous way, teaches kids about an important keystone species, krill, and why there are so many of them, why they are so small, and why they are so important. So, a couple of good nature-based books for you to consider, and I hope that you have wonderful holidays, and thanks for this opportunity to talk with you.
Hi, I'm William Kent Kruger, author of the New York Times bestselling Cork O'Connor Mysteries series. Fox Creek number 19 in the series was released in August with several starred reviews and a place on many best books of the year lists. But enough about me. I really want to give a shout out to one of Minnesota's finest writers in the crime genre, Matt Goldman. For those of you unfamiliar with Matt's work, for many years he wrote scripts for some of our favorite sitcoms, including Seinfeld and Ellen. But lately Matt has turned his considerable talent to writing mysteries, which has resulted in several highly acclaimed books in his Nils Shapiro series. But the book I want to recommend is a remarkable standalone titled Carolina Moonset. Drawn back to his family's home in Beaufort, South Carolina, Joey Green is enchanted by both his childhood memories of the area and a new relationship with the woman he meets there. The murder of a wealthy neighbor, however, dredges up skeletons from the past that many in Beaufort would prefer stay hidden. Goldman has an unerring eye for snappy dialogue and a poet's eye for the beauty of nature. This is a compelling story of how the past is never truly the past, and I loved this book.
Hello, my name is Elisa Bernick, and I am the author of Departure Stories, Betty Crocker Made Matzo Balls and Other Lies. And this is part memoir, part social history, and it uses my family's story to explore anti-Semitism and the struggle for women's rights here in Minnesota in the 1960s and early 1970s. But I would like to recommend that you check out The End of Bias, A Beginning by Jessica Nordell. Full disclosure, Jessica, it turns out, is married to a distant cousin of mine. I just found this out, but that is not why I'm recommending this book. This is a fascinating, well-researched, intelligent, and engaging read. It's a great discussion about unconscious bias, but not only the problem of it, the solution to it. Jessica, I think she took 15 years to compile scientific and sociological research in looking at real-world examples of how police departments, governmental organizations, and person-to-person relationships are affected by a variety of different solutions that are actually doing great work in the world. So, Jessica Nordell, The End of Bias, A Beginning. Check it out.
Hello, my name is Carol Maschke. I'm a local Minnesota author who lives in the Minneapolis area. I have a paranormal fantasy series called the Gaelic Moon series. It's about a woman from Minnesota who goes to Ireland, falls in love with an Irish guy, and then turns into a ghost story. There are witches, magical pubs, and all sorts of supernatural happenings. Second book in the series is called Call of the Gaelic Moon. It continues the adventures of Mary and Sean as they move forward with paranormal happenings around them. Both are award-winning series. They are age appropriate for adults and perhaps young adults to about age 15 or 16. They are available at Amazon.com in both print and ebook form. And my website is www.cairnmoon.com.
Hi, I'm Molly Beth Griffin. My new picture book this fall is called The Big Leaf Leap. Written by me and illustrated by Malik Davis, published with the Minnesota Historical Society Press. It's about a girl and her neighborhood friends working together to build a really, really big leaf pile. And it has some leaf facts in it as well. So it's sort of a friendship story, and it's definitely a fall book and also a science book. The book I want to recommend to you for a cozy winter read is called Christmas Fairies for Uma. It is by Lindsay McDivitt, local picture book author, and illustrated by Katarzyna Bukiert. I don't know if I'm saying that right. She's Polish. It's about a girl who writes a Christmas card for her grandmother, draws a Christmas card with fairies for her grandmother, and she sends it to South Africa, but she doesn't put the correct postage on it or address on it. And all along the way, people should throw it out because it doesn't have the correct information to get it to the girl's grandmother in South Africa. And every step of the way, somebody decides to do a little act of kindness and pass it along. And ultimately, it does get to Uma. And it's a very special Christmas magic story, perfect for a lap sit, story time with your grandchild, but also I think really great for all those kids whose grandparents are not close by for the holidays. And it's all about how the love can move across all those miles. So it's a very sweet Christmas story, Christmas Fairies for Uma by Lindsay McDivitt, and Big Leaf Leap. Thank you so much.
Hello, fellow book lovers. My name is Jeffrey B. Burton, and I'm the author of the Mace Reed Canine Mystery Series. And the latest one came out a few months ago, and it's called The Lost. And my series is about a bit of an offbeat dog handler that specializes in human remains detection. That is, he trains in cadaver dogs. And now and again, Mace and his pack of cadaver dogs will find a body that will rip open a Pandora's box of murder and mayhem. And we hope that Mace is able to survive with the help of his pack of cadaver dogs that he's nicknamed the Finders. But today I want to recommend a series that I've been catching up on in 2022, and it's the Chet and Bernie Mystery Series, also another book with dogs as protagonists. And this book is unique in that it is narrated by Chet, who's kind of a mixed breed mongrel. Bernie is the owner of Bernie Little Detective Agency, and so he and Chet are off on cases, which are narrated by Chet, which makes it for just a delightfully delicious read because Chet is on the verge of an epiphany, and then all of a sudden a squirrel or rabbit will run by and he'll have to chase after those. And Chet also gets excited when he gets to take down a bad guy, because that's when he gets to go after the pant leg. And so they're just wonderfully, delightfully delicious. And Spencer Quinn has probably a dozen of these books in the series out. And the first one is Doggone It. And they're just, like I said, they're delightfully delicious. You'll love them.
Hi, I'm Marlene Shabbat, a Minnesota mystery author. Perhaps you've read one of my stories in Mary Malone or Matt Malone's series. My latest adventure this year that came out is called Danger, Intrigue, Mystery, or Murder and More. It's an anthology, and it contains 22 short stories and 3 chapters from my next novel. You're going to meet characters that are very lively in this book. One is a Harriet Bishop, a school marm in the early 1800s in St. Paul. Another one is Vicar Quill and his wife Edith, who live in a tiny village in Great Britain. Mary Malone is another one, an amateur sleuth who goes up north to attend a wedding and finds the groom is missing. And then there's also Oscar Dementi, a retired PI, and his sidekick, Smitty, who they tell the tales of the nursery rhyme capers. The book that I'd like to recommend is Suli by John Grisham. It's a tale about a young 17-year-old South Sudanese boy and his experiences of triumph and tragedies when he leaves his tiny village in Africa with other Sudanese boys to play in a basketball tournament in the US. When they're there, they find out that college coaches will be there observing them and trying to pick the best talent. Suli soon finds out that he's not doing as well as he thought. And so he practices and practices, determined to tell them or show them how well a job he can do. He wants to stay in the US and help his family. While playing in the tournaments, though, Zuli's family is ravaged by civil war, and he decides he wants to go back home and forget about the tournaments. The coach and mentor that brought him to the US convinces him that it's impossible to go back with war raging. So he stays.
My latest novel is set in Ukraine during the final year of World War II. Entitled A Hidden Room and co-authored with my wife Barbara, it's based on the true story of a Jewish family who hid from the Nazis by taking refuge in a cave for more than 500 days. This incredible tale of survival never would have come to light, except a cave explorer from New York City traveled to Ukraine and found a whole bunch of World War II artifacts in a cave. When he got back home, he put a note online and managed to connect with some of the surviving members of the Sturmer family. Had Chris not done this research and written a book and helped with a documentary film, Barbara and I never would have known about this amazing story. When we sat down to write it, the one goal we had was, being that the Holocaust can potentially be such a brutal, oppressive topic, we wanted to make sure that this was a story that celebrated the power of hope and the strength of family ties, and hopefully we've succeeded in that. The other book I'd like to recommend is The Littlest Voyageur by Margie Prius, a fellow Duluth author. It's set in 1797, tells an incredible story of a little red squirrel named Jean Petit Le Rouge, who stows away in a Voyageur brigade and travels all the way from Montreal to Grand Portage. I'm a great fan of the Voyageurs, as you can tell from the photo behind me. And during the course of this voyage, he actually plays a lot of tricks on the Voyageurs. And once he gets to Grand Portage, he discovers that this group is actually there to collect pelts. Being a squirrel, he's really upset by that. He conspires with a little friend named Monique, and the two of them get together, and they try to convince the Voyageurs that it would be better off for them to take up another occupation that was less harmful to animals. So it becomes an animal rights story as well as a funny comedic journey for sure.
Hello, my name is Annika Fajardo, and I am excited to share with you my latest book for young readers. Meet Me Halfway just came out this year in 2022 from Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. This middle grade novel is about two girls who discover that they are half-sisters. Maddie has just moved from Minneapolis to the Santa Cruz area, and Mercedes has lived there for a long time. Maddie is shy, she's very introverted, she doesn't have a lot of friends because she's new. Meanwhile, Mercedes is a very bossy, popular girl, and the two of them do not think that they're going to get along very well. But when they find out that their father, the Colombian anthropologist, is a visiting professor at a nearby college, they hatch a plan to escape from their field trip and find him. They have to figure out how to get along the way. They have to figure out how to work together and to get to know each other as they try to find their family. So I hope that you'll check out Meet Me Halfway. I also wanted to share with you a brand new book that just came out by my friend Vanessa Torres. She grew up in Minneapolis and she now lives in Washington State. And she has written what is now considered historical fiction, takes place in the 1980s in Minneapolis. And it is about Rosa, who is a ballet dancer and is going to have a concert with the one and only Prince. So if you like YA books about finding your place in the world, about figuring out where you belong, and plenty of prints, you'll want to check out The Turning Point from Vanessa Torres. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cheryl Stefani, and I am the author of Big Cat, Little Fox. Big Cat, Little Fox is ideal for ages 5 years old all the way up through 5th or 6th grade. It's a story about learning how to be your best by being yourself, as told through my Maine Coon cat, Big Cat. There's Big Cat right there. Big Cat tries to be like Little Fox, but she learns at the end that she has to be herself. Big Cat Little Fox is available at bigcatbooks.com. It's also in the Hennepin County Library System. I love reading at schools and libraries and do lots of events. Thank you. Hope you enjoy my book.
Hi, I'm Minnesota author Jess Lowry. My latest release came out November 1st, and it's called The Quarry Girls. It's true crime-inspired suspense, and it's set in 1977 St. Cloud, Minnesota, when there were 2 and possibly 3 serial killers operating. I hope you'll check it out. The book I'm recommending that everybody read is Wanda Morris's Anywhere You Run. It just came out the end of October this year, and it is a page-turning mystery set in Jim Crow, Mississippi, but it is also a really uniquely American story. I guarantee the characters will stick with you for a very, very long time, and you, like me, will be telling everybody to read this book. Thank you. I hope you have a great holiday season.
Hi, I'm Laura Purdy Salas, a Minnesota children's author, and I would like to share with you my most recent book, We Belong, with beautiful illustrations by Carlos Velez Aguilera. And this is a rhyming picture book. It's about opposites like short and tall and quiet and loud, but it's also about how little those opposites really matter in the bigger scheme of things, and how closely connected we all are to each other. And one of my favorite bits in the book is near the end. If we could stand on the moon, we'd see Earth round and small, one dazzling spinning blue and green ball, one circular swirl that is home to us all. And I loved writing this book and sharing it with kids. And a book by someone else that I would like to share with you is called Hello Earth, Poems to Our Planet. The poems are by Joyce Sidman, another Minnesota author and poet. And the illustrations are by Miran Asin Laura. Excuse me. And While We Belong is about people and how we are connected to each other, Hello Earth is a poetry collection, and it is about our wonderful Earth and all the amazing things we know about it and the things we don't know about it, and how connected we really are to our planet. So I hope you enjoy one or both of these books about connection, and thanks for letting me connect with you. Bye.
Hey library friends, Sarah Stonich here. I have a couple of book recommendations. One of my own books I would recommend Reeling, which is the follow-up to my book Fishing, about Rayanne Dahl and the first all-women's fishing talk show on public television. This book takes Rayanne and her crew to New Zealand. So it's kind of, there's a little bit of travel going on in this one, a little bit of an adventure. But the same premise. Rayanne is trying to figure stuff out, and she goes to New Zealand and does it. Walking the Old Road by Stacy Droulard. And what better place to be reading that than Cook County, which is, here we are, beautiful Lake Superior. And this book is a people's history of Chippewa City and the Grand Marais Anishinaabe. And it's quite a read. And, there's a lot more to Grand Marais than World's Best Donuts and Artist Point. And I can't recommend this book enough. I know Stacy has another new book called Seven Aunts, and I wish I had that with me. It's a great cover, but I would definitely also recommend that title from her. I was lucky enough to hear her read and talk about it recently at a writers conference in South Dakota. So those are my recommendations: Walking the Old Road and Seven Ants and Reeling and Fishing, since, you know, we're there. We happen to share our publisher is the University of Minnesota Press. So you can get both of these books from them. Thanks very much. Happy reading.
Hello, this is my Cairn Terrier Wallace. We'd like to say thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Before we conclude, allow me a moment to share a quick reminder about Minnesota Association of Library Friends membership renewals. MALF operates on a membership equal to the calendar year. This means that all 2022 members are due to renew by January, thanks to the scores of friends who have done so already. If you have not yet renewed, look for the letter mailed last month to the address on file. You can locate and download the renewal form here in Zoom chat as well. Alternatively, you're welcome to renew your annual membership online and remit dues via PayPal. See the shortened links on the screen and in chat. If you are new to MALF, we'd love to have you join us officially as a member. Dues are low, just $20 a year for individuals and $35 a year for friends of the library groups of all sizes. Libraries and library foundations are also welcome to join at $35 per year. Please visit our newly revitalized website, mnlibraryfriends.org, for an overview of all the benefits your membership brings. You can also direct any specific questions to our office, info@mnlibraryfriends.org, or at 651-366-6492. Use those same contact details if you're a current member but unsure of your current renewal status. Thanks for staying with us through this important housekeeping note. And thank you again for joining us for Welcome to Warm Reads for Cold Nights, Minnesota Authors Recommend. Be on the lookout for that follow-up email. Happy holidays, everyone.